Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, Just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you're all doing awesome on this Valentine's Day. So, as we go through the day here, let's check out. We got an interesting article here. It's talking about our elves, talking about elves in the Tolkien universe. So let's check it out. This is coming to us from the folks over at cbr.com, and it says how elven movie appearances differ from the Lord of the Rings novels. Elves are a staple of Tolkien's Middle-earth, but exactly how accurate are their on-screen depictions compared to the Lord of the Rings novels? This is by Ben Hardwick. Elves have always been a staple of Tolkien's Middle-earth, and they've since become so common in fantasy that most people can instantly recognize their appearance. With a tall and thin stature, elegant features, and pointed ears, they're said to be the finest beings created by the gods. However, Tolkien was incredibly particular about how his elves should appear, and so the movie adaptations of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings haven't always lined up. All right, so I'm sorry, I'm just pausing this here. All right. On top of the usual features, the elves of Middle-earth never appeared to age past 50, and the physical differences between males and females was rather insignificant. Despite emphasizing their strength and power time and time again, Tolkien rarely imposed the traditional manly stereotypes on elves, instead always favoring an angelic and androgynous look. And as with all of his work, he was very critical when it came to other artists' renditions. The animated Middle-earth movies Elves stray from Tolkien's vision. Oh yeah, they absolutely do. Tolkien's work was first brought to the screen with 1977's The Hobbit, an animated movie that received mixed reviews. While the art style has some classic charm to it, many of the characters appear quite off-putting, especially the elves. When the company of Thorin Oakenshield reaches Rivendell, the elves are depicted as tall, goblin-like creatures with gray skin and wrinkled faces. It was far from the elves Tolkien described, but this was long before elves were a common idea in pop culture, so it gets a little forgiveness. Not really. An animated adaptation of The Lord of the Rings arrived 1 year later, made by a different company with a far different art style. While the movie is criticized for its awkward animation, the elven designs were at least closer to Tolkien's vision. Most were taller and fairer than the men and actually looked human rather than demonic. Although Legolas's design is often mocked for the goofy expressions he makes throughout. Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings feature more accurate elves. As is no surprise, Peter Jackson's adaptation of The Lord of the Rings is the most accurate to date, with actors like Orlando Bloom and Cate Blanchett playing iconic elves. They certainly provide the elegance Tolkien was always going for. Of course, there's always a limitation with how tall and androgynous the costume and makeup can make them appear, but for the most part, Jackson got the casting spot on. Ironically enough, Legolas may be the furthest from Tolkien's vision. Despite providing little description of Legolas's looks, Tolkien usually disliked the idea of him being, quote, beautiful. In the history of Middle-earth, one of Tolkien's notes pushes back on the notion that Legolas was feminine and emphasizes the fact that he was particularly tall, strong, and resilient for an elf. Nevertheless, Jackson still wins when it comes to elven movie depictions. Tolkien always stressed how elves appear noticeably more elegant when next to the race of men. And the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy accomplishes that goal. There's also the more recent Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which continued the accurate trend with its depiction.
You serious?
Yeah, that's right. That's what they said. Yeah, all right, so let's get into it. Yeah. And this goes back to the argument when Rings of Power first came out and everybody and their mother was saying that Tolkien fans that did not approve of the character of Randir, right? The first black elf, although he's technically Latino. Or I should say the actor is Latino, Cordova. Um, and everyone was saying, well, you're just being racist. You don't want to see people of color in your, white Tolkien space, right? And it was like, no, that's not it. It's just that Tolkien, he very much describes what the elves look like. And the character of Arandir is none of that. Okay, Tolkien does describe them as being tall and fair, and like the article says, which I find rather funny because these are the same people that were calling people like me racist 6 months ago when we were criticizing the show. Um, you know, they point out that Tolkien was very critical of how his elves were depicted. He was very strict in what he thought they looked like, and he pushed back when he thought people were going off the rails with the depiction. And he does describe them as being almost androgynous, being tall, fair, okay, with the long hair, almost appearing angelic by comparison to the men of Middle Earth. And when I say men, I mean this standard humans, right? So this article just sort of highlights this whole idea of, and that was just my phone, you can ignore that, just highlights this whole idea that Tolkien did in fact describe his elves. He was very particular in what they looked like, okay? And so, when Rings of Power steps in and they decide that they're going to just completely go the opposite way with it, right? Like, it's not just Arandir, okay, isn't the only one, right? But as the article points out, rightly so, very few elves ever appear to look like they are older than a 50-year-old person would appear, right? Yet in the show, we have Celebrimbor, who clearly is older than 50, right? And I mean, not in his actual age, but the actor who plays him looks older than 50, right? So right away, that's not correct, okay? Then you have all these other, like Elrond and these other male elves that have these really short haircuts, short modern 2022, 2023 style haircuts, right? Which don't make any sense. They're all short. They make them look more like Vulcans from the Star Trek films than looking like elves from Middle Earth, right? So that's also off. And then you also get the fact that you have this one single elf of color, right, that nobody can explain, and I'm still waiting to hear a valid reason as to what elves is he descended from, that they are the only elves of color, the only ones in all of Middle Earth, because we don't ever see any other ones. We don't ever hear any reference to any other ones. We don't hear about elves that maybe were down, by Harad and stuff like that, and maybe that explained why they were darker of complexion or some. I don't know. I'm just saying we literally get one individual tokenized dark-skinned elf who has, throughout the entire series, the world's most perfect fade. Who's cutting this dude's hair, right? But I'm the racist. I'm the person who's trying to prevent people from color from being able to participate in fantasy because it's my white safe space. You can go kiss my ass with that nonsense. I'm not about to give you any more time here, but my point being is that, yes, this article does in fact point out that Tolkien's elves have a particular look, and the Rings of Power, despite what this article tries to say, because this article, you notice how they kind of like try to throw it in there, like, oh, by the way, the Rings of Power also did good, and it's like, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. They are not accurate in any way, shape, or form. If anything, the most accurate elf in the Rings of Power, and I have to say it, is Galadriel. She's probably the most now. It's not an accurate representation of the character of Galadriel, right? But Morfydd Clark looks like what you would consider a Tolkienian elf, right? What Tolkien had in mind with his elves, right? She could be up there next to Cate Blanchett, okay, and Orlando Bloom and not look out of place, okay? That's the reality of it. Okay, so I'll acknowledge that. So she may look accurate. Like I said, the depiction of the character of Galadriel is not accurate in the Rings of Power. Not even close. It's complete, insult to the character of Galadriel. But in terms of looking like a elf that Tolkien created, Morfydd Clark does come closest out of the entire cast. Okay. But yeah, like I said, Tolkien is very specific. He does, he doesn't have his elves being depicted as being like big, brawny, type of guys. He leaves that for the humans that look like, they hit the gym, or they're there, lifting, and stuff like that. He doesn't depict his elves like that. As the article correctly points out, they tend to be taller, a slender stature, very angelic by comparison to men and dwarves and stuff like that. Fair skinned, okay, with the long hair. Tolkien approved many a depiction of his elves that are sort of what inspired the Peter Jackson version. Okay, so Tolkien was on board with that look for them. So, this whole argument of, Tolkien never really describes what his elves look like. Yes, he does. And this article is just proof, which I find ironic because, like I said, 4 months ago, these people were the same ones making the argument that anybody who doesn't like Arondir is a racist. And now they're sitting here going, well, Peter Jackson's depiction of the elves as being long-haired and fair-skinned and stuff, that's the most accurate and stuff like that. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for telling me that shit that I was saying 4 months ago when you were praising this crappy show and I was calling it out for its nonsense, and you were saying that I was the one that was, quote-unquote, the racist and the bigot. But thank you for eventually coming around and acknowledging the facts as they are. But yeah, so anyway, I just thought it was interesting that now, like, they'll at least come out and say it now on a subtle, on like a subtle little way, and they'll throw that little, well, Rings of Power also gets it accurate, bye-bye, type of thing at the end there, which I think is a little, kind of shisty stuff, which is why I had to literally put that that video of from Spider-Man of the character laughing, because it's just ridiculous what they do. It's ridiculous what they do. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to share that one with you guys. So yes, we were all right. The elves in Peter Jackson's films are more accurate and more closely representative of the elves as Tolkien describes them and as Tolkien envisioned them than anything that the Rings of Power has shown us. So there you go. All right, folks, let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Do you think that Peter Jackson's films got it right when it came to the elves, or do you think the Rings of Power is more on spot on when it comes to the look, the aesthetics of the elves, their appearance and stuff like that? Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. It ought to be interesting. I'm pretty sure I know what most of you guys think, but you never know. Other opinions are welcome. I have no problem. If you think the Rings of Power got it more accurate, then make the case. I'm open to being persuaded. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Remember, if you like the video, then like the video. If you feel like sharing the video, by all means, do so. It helps us with the YouTube. Yeah, I'm going to try this again. Take 2. If you like the video, like the video. And if you feel like sharing the video, by all means, do so. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us get seen. And if you have not subscribed to the channel and are watching for the first time, I would hope that you would consider giving your subscription to the channel. It's going to help us build up this thing that we're trying to do here, this sort of community-based, Tolkien and fantasy is our thing. So, we're trying to build a community here of people that like to talk about this stuff and, have discussions and so on and so forth. So I would hope that you would consider subscribing. And if you are a returning subscriber, as always, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I think that's going to do it for today's videos. I'm going to leave it on the angelic elves. And so there will be more videos coming out throughout the week. And then we're going to have the live stream on Saturday. Don't know exactly what we're doing on Saturday. I've heard from a couple of you guys, both behind the scenes and down in the chats in the comment sections. Still working out how to do certain things. But yeah, I'm sure I'll post something by like Thursday or Friday saying, hey, as of right now, live stream is going to be same time, Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And so, yeah, that's not going to change. But exactly what we're covering, I was discussing down in the comments section. There's another version of the Lament for Boromir that I want to check out down in the comment section for the live stream. We were discussing it, and I do have another video of this other alternative. It's a bunch of guys doing a version of that. So I know that's going to be something that's going to be on the agenda for Saturday. But as far as the rest of the show for Saturday, I don't know. I haven't settled on anything yet. I have a couple of ideas swirling around in the old noodle, and we'll see how it goes. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this one. I will talk to you on the next one. Remember to be good, be safe, be awesome, but most importantly, stay more dorkish. Peace.